Welcome to Investors Hangout, where we take up issues that you are very passionate about: investments, savings, mutual funds, and of course, you do have some questions which we answer for you, which are related to investments and savings. This edition of Investors Hangout is brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Value Research. My name is Rajesh Lake, and with me is Dhirendra Kumar, CEO, Value Research, and we are here to talk about how long is long term. Dhirendra, everyone invests, and the recommendations that are given by you is that remain invested for a long term. I would like to know, what is the definition of this long term?
Well, there are different definitions which people, of course, it is being said time and again that invest in equity for the long run. And there are different definitions. The government gives a definition that hold your investment for 1 year and you are not subject to short-term capital gains.
Correct.
Government treats investments of more than 365 days as long-term capital gain, as long-term. But that I don't think is the correct definition of investors from their suitability point of view. Investors should look at what the kind of return that we have earned from Sensex, the unmanaged index. The return is 13% over the last 5 years. But within these 5 years, if you look at 5 annual returns given in each year, it ranges between -9% to 45%. So there was a year in which you lost 9% money. Your 100 rupee became 91. And then there is a year in which your 100 rupee became 145. So this kind of variability that you see, you are able to reduce the likelihood of losing money only if you have this 5-year view, long-term view. And from my perspective, I think any period less than 5 years could be risky, because we have done a very extensive study, understood that if you have a short-term view, the likelihood of losing money is very high. Equity is a very volatile asset. Also, your psychological odds are against you. When investors invest, very confidently when the market is doing well, which means that your investments have done well, it has gone up. And investments are cyclical; they go down only after they have gone up. So, when you invest with great confidence in the market and you see a big slip, you pull out. And if you have a short-term view, then you are more likely to be disappointed, unlikely to stick with your investment strategy, unlikely to have that long-term view. You started with a short-term view to begin with, so your odds are against you once you are faced with losses. So having this time frame in mind before you start is crucial.
So what's wrong if if my returns are 10% in the last 3 months, and I take those returns home?
If you invested for 10% return, and this has happened in just about 3 months,
Okay.
and but you started with 1 year view or whatever, even longer, then by all means take it out. But I think even thinking of 1 year and investing in equity could be dangerous, because
Right.
there are phases, there are periods where 1% 1 year return could be devastating for investors. If you invested in the early 2008, and if you're with a 1 year view and you are faced with a 60% decline or 70% decline in your investment value, and that is what many investors did, they will be in for a surprise. They will be driven out of the market. They will cash out their investments at the inopportune time, and they will never come back to invest again in their lifetime. So it not only causes a loss, it also deprives you of any future possibility of benefiting from the market, because only with this time frame in mind, if you invest, that you can benefit from equity. Otherwise, it will turn out to be very disappointing.
I'm sure all our viewers would like to know the definition of this long-term horizon. How long is long-term? And what basis do you calculate?
No, basically we did a very comprehensive study, and not very long back. In fact, we did this secrets of profitable SIPs. And for this, we looked at the SIP return generated by all Indian funds since the start, going back 25 years, and we looked at all time period, the best of 1 year, and the worst of 1 year, and we did it for all the monthly time period of all the existing equity funds in the country.
Okay.
And the result was very straightforward. We found that on an average, if you invest through SIP, then any period of less than 5 years could possibly, not necessarily, but possibly can, every fund had you could have lost money with a majority of the funds if you invested for a 1 year time period. 1 year SIP is no guarantee. And even if period of less than 5 years can potentially cause a loss. Of course, the number of readings where we got losses on less than 5 years was not much, but you can potentially lose money. Only when the time period goes beyond 5 years, the possibility of losing money with SIP, even with the worst fund, came down to nearly zero.
That's interesting research. Do catch hold of the value research mutual fund insight, and you will know what Dhiren is talking about in detail. So my next question is, if you've defined 5 years, should I get out after 5 years and then restart?
No, the whole idea of this 5 year, how we arrived at, and this is based on the past. So it could be, 5 year, 4.5 years, five and a half year. But that 5 year is actually not the point. The point is that most people investing in equity, they come with a short-term orientation. They think that the market is doing well, they need to quickly profit from it. That is a wrong orientation to have. Have at least 5 year time frame, invest methodically, and invest for a time period till you don't need the money, because everybody's circumstances are different. If you are investing in your accumulation phase, invest for 25 years if you are a young person getting started, and then you have to invest for income in retirement, or if you have to invest till retirement, keep doing that. Your money will compound at a faster rate. Take your money out only methodically only when you get close to needing it for consumption.
Okay, so what you're talking about is that we should continue to do that till we require the money. The SIPs should continue.
Yep.
And while we were talking some time back, you mentioned about do the reverse of the SIP.
Yep.
Would you explain this to our viewers?
Yeah, reverse of SIP, this 5 year time period should also be looked upon in terms of your exit strategy. If you're looking for, if you plan to consume, you need the money 2 years from now, 3 years from now, methodically exit, because you can't depend on the market. The reason, markets can surprise you in the short run. So markets can surprise you in the short run, not only while you are investing, also when you want your money. So when you need the money, and if you are thinking of that on December 31st, 2017, you'll need the money, and a couple of days before you'll take the money out, you could be in for a surprise. Taking the same principle that you can't bank on the market in the short run, you should methodically pull your money out well before you need the money. And depending on the magnitude, depending on the scale, if you need all your money for consumption, buying a house or some such need, then you need to methodically exit your investments in the next, I would say that 12 to 18 months time frame. The kind of principle that we follow for investing a large lump sum, that 18 months to 3 years for an all important goal, the reverse of that, 18 to 13 months, 36 months for your withdrawal plan, depending on the scale of it.
So what we're talking about is that, okay, if I have a goal, a financial goal in mind, I should withdraw the money. Then after I have kind of taken care of that need that I have, I should go back to investing again.
Yeah,
which you should actually.
If you are still in the income phase, if you are still in the accumulation phase, you have accumulated some money, your savings, and you need it for some purpose, but you are still on with your income, then you should continue your investment plan. That is completely different from the consumption
withdrawal
need
that you're talking about.
So start accumulating it for whatever goal, or just no goal, but just invest. And long-term money should be invested in equity. Should be invested in equity methodically, and it should be. You should always have 5 year time frame. Any goal which is less than 5 year old, I think you should consider more conservative vehicle, fixed income fund for short-term goals. You need the money in 1.5 years, 2 years. Down payment for your car, or buying a car a year and a half from now. That's something where you should be doing your recurring deposit, or your SIP in a bond fund, where the possibility of your plans will not be the idea is that you should eliminate the risk of making your plan dependent on the market.
Okay. So I hope viewers, you've understood how long is long. Minimum 5 at least. Okay. Thereafter, systematically withdraw your money, and but the need of the hour is that you continue to save, and that too through the SIP.
Yes.
Right. Okay, it's time for us to move on to the questions that you have asked us. And the first one is from Ajay. And he says, and he's a 50-year-old plus man. And he says, long term have no meaning for 50 plus people as they're quite close to the retirement.
No, long term has very serious meaning for the people who are close to retirement, somebody at 50, because you are going to live longer.
Yeah.
And the great, I think they need, they really need to have the long term orientation. You should have a short term orientation for your income requirement. Assuming that somebody at 50 and he has been able to accumulate 50 lakh rupees as his retirement corpus, and when you retire at 60, if you move all your money into fixed income, your capital will remain constant and you'll start consuming the income. So you need to really take a long, in fact, it's more important for a person at 50 who will retire in 10 years time to take a long-term view, because you should take a long-term view with the money from which you don't intend to derive income, or if you don't have enough, then you should be investing in a vehicle from which you should be deriving a part of it. We have talked about what should be your withdrawal strategy, what should be your drawdown strategy, that if you invest 50 lakh rupees and if you take 4% of that, your money will grow and it will produce income as well, and it will also have the possibility of producing inflation adjusted income. 4% on a growing corpus, because that is the problem which most old people will be facing. In their retirement, their money will be in fixed income capital will remain constant, you will consume your income from those investments, and that will also not be tax efficient. So investing through a vehicle where it becomes tax efficient, capital remains inflation adjusted, will be crucial. So they need to definitely embrace the idea of long-term investment, because you are going to live longer. Reducing the possibility of not outliving your savings, it will be important.
That's something to really think about, So 4%, if you, as you
4
said,
to 5% withdrawal from a relative, with a mix of equity and bonds, even a 50% equity, 50% bond. And if you are able to take away only 4%, then there is a possibility that your capital will grow, because 4% of an X amount will not be enough 5 years from now, because your need for income will grow. So your capital needs to grow as well.
Okay. From 50-year-old, we come down to the 20-year-old who's pursuing law, and his name is Ashray. From his internship earnings, he has invested 10,000 every month in a couple of mid and small cap funds for long term. Is he doing the right thing, he asks?
Yes, for a 20-year-old who has got started, I would like to congratulate him, and it is not the finest way of getting started, but not a bad way, because it says in terms of learning, of course it can be disappointing. Mid caps and small caps, they provide great returns.
Correct.
And they have given, he might have earned great returns so far. But looking at recent past performance, investing in a fund can prove to be disappointing. It's always good to invest in a manner that you start developing a belief in this. So testing the water, best way to go about it is a balanced fund. But for somebody who is 20, can be venturesome, will aspire for some superior return. Keep in mind that you are investing, I don't know how long will your internship last, or or maybe
I'm sure he'll get into a job.
It's important that to benefit most from such a fund, your ability to invest through the lean cycle, because right now what we are witnessing is a great up cycle, despite not so great corporate performance. So they will be in for you'll be in for very turbulent times. Investing through those bad times is very important to benefit the most from a small and mid cap funds.
So the mantra is, no matter what the time, and especially the turbulent time,
when they are struggling,
keep on investing. Do not go down on your SIPs on that. All right, Mr. Raj wants to know, why do mutual funds have so many schemes, which makes fund selection confusing? Won't it be simpler and logical to have only a few schemes?
Yes, ideally, but at a certain level, mutual fund industry is getting older. It has legacy. They have launched funds, and unlike any consumer product, when you launch a improved soap and phase out the older one. In financial products, you can't do that, because they continue. Investors have invested and they remain invested. So there is a legacy. I completely agree that
There are a whole lot
there's
of
just
them.
too many funds,
Yeah.
and it adds to the confusion. But you can have, you just need to look at 2-3 kind of funds. In fact, if you look at 4 kind of funds, that will take care of most every investor's need. Investing for tax saving, you have a tax saving fund. Investing, getting started, or first time investor trying to, never invested long term money, invest in a balanced fund. If you get into and if once you are 2-3 year experience of investing in balanced fund, then move into a multi cap fund, and that's about it. 2-3 kind of funds. And if you become venturesome, somebody the person Ashra, who is doing his internship and investing 10,000, he becomes venturesome, allocate some money to mid and small cap fund, and that's about it. 4 kind of funds, and money for the short run, the money which you are likely to need in couple of days or couple of months. Investing in an ultra short term bond fund or a liquid fund will do the job. So there will be too many funds, but you can focus on these 4-5 kinds, and that's about it. That will serve most of your needs.
All right. Now, since you mentioned about long term, and we were talking about long term funds, should one look at one's portfolio from time to time and, as you said, from balanced, go to multi cap, etc.? Should one do that periodically, or should one stay with what one has?
No, I keep saying all these things. It actually sounds little complicated, but I keep saying this because investors believe in something which is market linked. Developing that belief is very important. When you invest for the first time and you look at a short term fund, a small cap fund or a micro cap fund which has done exceptionally well. There are funds which gave a return of 50-60% for 2-3 successive years, and those returns look phenomenal. It's very difficult to resist that. And when investors invest and they see that 20% decline, 30% decline in 3 months time frame, they are awed by that. There's a disbelief. They get out of the market. So to benefit from this market or market linked investment over a long period of time, you need to really get in a manner that you start believing in it, and you are able to withstand the ups and downs of the market because you have experienced it. So doing it in a calibrated way is the only way you can do it, is invest in a balanced fund. Only after 2-3 years, once you have settled with that, they will also be volatile but relatively less. Then get into a multi cap fund, then make some allocation to mid and small cap fund, and that's about it. So, and if you just want to keep it simple, balanced funds will actually meet the needs of most long term investors as well.
Okay, we're talking about long term. If I'm there for 20 years in long term investment, my returns are guaranteed somehow?
No.
And this is a question that has been asked by our next viewer. And if returns are guaranteed, if he does a SIP of at least 25 years, he has SIPs in diversified, large cap, and ELSS schemes. Unfortunately, he's not given us his name, but this is his query. Okay. What if the return, if he continues to invest in SIPs?
Investors have reasonable expectation that return over a long period of time, if they are so well, they should be guaranteed. Mutual funds do not guarantee return. They do not guarantee any kind of return, even capital protection. But looking at last 25 years, now we have had a mutual fund industry. The modern mutual fund industry started in 1993, and even before that there are mutual funds which exist, UTI, CanBank, SBI, they are still in existence. So we have funds with 30-year track record, and 30-year track record of investment in equity. What I find is that if you would have invested in the worst of fund in the last 20 years, and there are a reasonable number of funds with that longer history, in the worst of funds, you have not only been able to beat fixed income. The worst fund has been able to generate more return than fixed income, and nobody has lost money. The trick is to be able to invest regularly, consistently over this period of time.
See the compounding effect.
Yes, but at the same time, I would like to put a rider on this, that of this 25-year period, that we have seen, any 25-year period in most economies except for Japan, there has been a phase where people spot a period where a 25-year period and there wasn't a return. Even in India, we had a phase that somebody invested at peak in 1992, the Great Indian Scam that happened, and market was able to achieve that same level, and it took 10 years. Then we
Okay.
achieved that point of 4,000 points on the Sensex 10 years later, 1992, and then we it happened again in 2002 or 2003. So it took 11 years. But even during that period, somebody would have done his SIP. He would have been phenomenally wealthy.
Just the way Ashray would be,
Yes, he has got started. And
I like that. 20 years, and by the
20
time
years.
he's 60, I'm sure he has quite a huge amount in his
Yeah, but
kitty.
he will have a lot of entry milestones, 20 years, and of course he will be much better off than most others, because a 20-year-old, I
But I'm
think,
sure he'll increase his SIPs
the
also.
big difference between Ashray is in minority, in a
Correct.
way that, Ashray is 20-year-old and doing his 10,000 rupee SIP. I would imagine that, many people like him,
Yeah.
many people of his age might be buying their iPhone on EMI, and so he will be phenomenally rich than most others.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. This is from Mr. Subramaniam, and he says that he had invested in primary market issues of HDFC Bank, Reliance, and HPCL during 1987 and 88. He still holds them, and his returns are phenomenal. Should he continue to hold them or sell them? And if he sells, where else should he put these returns?
The kind of return that he has got, if you can invest in equity, you have the patience, you have the temperament. But I think, there will be another part of the story, Mr. Subramaniam's story, which does not find a mention in this mail. There was a IPO boom, and people believed in IPO, and IPO was the only way in the 80s and early 90s for people to invest in market, because mutual funds did not exist, open-end funds did not exist. And 1993, the modern mutual fund industry got started, and it took 5-7 years to evolve itself. So the only way you could invest in equity was through an IPO. Right. And going in the secondary market, looking for a broker who will be interested in entertaining your business, and investing 5,000 rupee, 10,000 rupee in the market was not possible. So one side of his story, which is not finding a mention here, is that of the 3 winners that he has, there'll be 10 losers as well. There'll be 5-10 duds, because IPO was the way to invest. We were getting IPO initial public offer often, and so many companies would have died. So, and that is the benefit of diversification. But if you find it interesting, if you have the time and inclination, and to understand company, invest directly, by all means do that. The next best thing is a mutual fund, which gives you instant diversification. You don't have to worry about the duds. It will be internally created. Paperwork is simple, and of course it comes with a cost of the management fee.
Okay. Are government employees allowed to invest in equity market?
Oh, there is no restriction. It's the most legitimate activity. Not only government employees are allowed to invest, I think they should be encouraged to invest.
Okay.
Because government employees, the whole preference for a government employee, I'm just thinking, I'm imagining that, you are risk averse, or you are looking for a stable career, and you choose the government as your employer. Or you will have, or many people also will have the service orientation, that you are doing something for the nation. But that apart, because if you are that conservative person who is looking for a stable career, and all your money finds its way into fixed income, or at best, in fact, all new government employees, they are equity investors too, in a way, because all government employees who came in the fold since 2004, their provident fund is finding its way into NPS, the National Pension System. And National Pension System, 10% of his money is invested into equity. And that return is
so by default, they are all there.
They are all there. And there is absolutely no restriction. There is a great advantage. For somebody like him, I would like to tell him the key advantage, that where you can invest in equity methodically. All the returns that you generate from equity for holding over 1 year becomes completely tax-free.
So Karamveer, I hope you heard this, and you have heard Dhiren say you have no problem. There is no problem if you invest in equities as a government employee. And other government employees, in fact, Dhiren is saying he would like to encourage you to invest in the equities. Okay, moving on. Anuj wants to know if the fund risk measure on value research are forward-looking or derived from past performances. If derived from past performances, Are they reliable for future?
They are all the risk return and the rating of that value research compute for every fund, and which is revised every month, is based on past performance. But it is based on past performance relative to other funds of similar kind. So it is an indicator that given the compared to all other funds of same kind, how it has been, how it has behaved.
Okay.
So I don't think the character changes dramatically, because all these funds are a diversified portfolio. The fund manager behaves and conducts in a manner, his preferences get reflected in his portfolio, and that translates into a price performance. If there is a multi-cap fund and the preference of a fund manager is to choose momentum stocks, that will lend great volatility, as compared to another fund manager who will be looking at relatively stodgy, relatively stable stocks, which will not be very volatile, with low beta stocks. So those characters will not change. So it is not past performance. I would like to remind once again that mutual funds, the past performance should be no indicator of future. But because mutual funds still it is managed by the same attributes, same variables, same preferences, it is reasonable to expect that relative to others, it will be somewhat similar.
Okay.
But shorter time numbers should not be trusted.
Okay. Sridev asks, wouldn't it be better to rate fund managers instead of funds, since the fund's performance is a reflection of the fund manager itself? I remember we were talking about the three things that they need to keep in mind while investing, and fund manager was one of them. According to Sridev, this will also give fund managers and fund houses a sense of responsibility and ownership over fund performance. What do you have to say?
Yes, fund managers, are very important, is the most important person in the whole framework. Of course, the purpose of the fund, the stated objective, what it has set out to do, and also the company in terms of how it is configured, because the fund manager or selection of a fund manager is the responsibility of the fund company. If a fund company chooses a not so reliable or not so dependable or not so well performing fund manager, they stand to lose business. So in a sense, they contribute to it. Fund managers should be rated, but it's very hard to do that, because fund managers move, and many fund managers move into business roles. There is a discontinuity of their performance, but we try and do that. We do this annual exercise for a publication, and we definitely flag all the fund manager changes. So you should look at it, and we are thinking in terms of doing it more often and factoring the fund manager's performance across various funds, but it should be taken with one should keep in mind few things. One is that the fund character changes. A fund manager can be very impressive till it was a small fund. The moment the fund becomes very large, the fund manager needs a different kind of skills, while he has built his reputation based on something else. Likewise, a fund manager who was managing a different kind of fund may not be just as good while managing another mandate.
Okay. So we'll move on towards the last question, and this is from Mr. Natarajan. He says that analysts advise to invest in existing funds instead of the new ones, but every successful fund was also new at some point. What's your take on that? Interesting.
Yes. No, it's true that if you don't invest in a new fund, how will it go? But that is the fund management company's problem. If I have to choose between, of course, that was a problem of the past. Today we have a problem of plenty. Somebody had to get started, and of course, if you have to choose between something you know about as compared to you don't know anything about, and so I would rather go with something which is tested, proven, and I know, and it's established portfolio. When you're investing in an existing fund, you know where the money is invested, how the fund has done in a lean market and a great market. You understand its behavior, and your money straightway goes to work. While a new fund will get started, deploy the money, start generating. Many people used to, there was this whole misunderstanding that you are buying a fund cheap when you are buying early, but the same money will go and get invested at today's prices, so it doesn't matter how the fund does from there on. This was one big myth which prevails, and for a long period, people thought that they're buying a new fund and buying at 10 rupee and it's cheap, which is not true.
I'm sure you'll agree that Dhiren has done full justice to the queries that you've asked, and we know that you've also got to know what is the long-term horizon that you need to be invested in, and that is of course 5 years, and of course based on what your need is. Thereafter you need to withdraw your fund, and of course you need to be regular in doing your SIPs. Okay, so stay invested till the time you need the money.
Yes, yes.
With that, it's time for us to wind up this edition. We will be back with you next week. Till then, take care and keep invested.